I would do it again in a heartbeat, and I would do it again backwards. It was the most incredible long distance hiking trip I have ever done. Absolutely would do it again.
You've no doubt heard of the El Camino, or the Way. It was put on the radar of Americans by the 2010 Martin Sheen movie. But did you know that there are actually several routes to Santiago de Compostela in Spain? When people think of the Camino, most people are thinking of the French or the Portuguese Way, the two most popular routes. But actually, the very first pilgrimage to Santiago was done way back in the year 814 by King Alfonso of Asturias. It was Alfonso who built the original shrine to St. James in Santiago, where the remains of St. James are thought to be buried. This route, called the Camino Primitivo, as well as the original way, is arguably the prettiest and most challenging of the routes. But most people have never heard of it, so it's much less trafficked each year. In fact, pre-pandemic, almost 350,000 people did a Camino, and the French Way constituted about 55% of the total pilgrims, about 190,000 people. The Portuguese Way, which we covered cycling that Camino in episode 109, makes up about 20%, around 72,000 of the total pilgrims. Compare that to the original way, this Primitivo Camino. It gets less than 16,000 pilgrims, or less than 5% of the total number of pilgrims. So, the Primitivo is the route for you if you want a challenge, exceptional beauty, and serenity on your Camino. I can't wait to share more about this special Camino Primitivo, so let's get started. Welcome to the Active Travel Adventures podcast. I'm your host, Kit Parks. Today we head to Spain, to Oviedo, to walk the Camino Primitivo. We have Rose with us today, who's going to tell us about a path that most of you may not even be aware of on the El Camino de Santiago. She did the Primitivo, which is actually the original way. And some might say not only is it the first, but it may be the hardest. So welcome to the program, Rose. We look forward to hearing all about it.
Hi, Kit. Thank you so much for having me.
So before we get started, is this a normal kind of thing for you to do, or do you have a background in adventure travels, or was this a stepping out of your comfort zone, or give us a little perspective of who Rose is?
So the Camino wasn't a common occurrence for me. I had just graduated from undergrad at the School of the Art Institute of Chicago with a degree in art history. So I knew that I really wanted to travel abroad because I never had the opportunity to in undergrad. And also hiking was sort of something that I knew that I wanted to do more of, but never really had the opportunity to. And being the type of person that I am, I just really wanted to throw myself into the most extreme situation that I could, which happened to be the Camino Primitivo, long distance hike, mountainous terrain in northern Spain. So it was sort of a spontaneous decision to do so.
That's cool. So why don't you give us a little overview of the trail itself, and then we'll dig down a little bit deeper.
So I started in Oviedo, which is the traditional starting point for the Camino Primitivo. Some people jump on from the Camino del Norte and other people join from other paths, but I started in Oviedo and ended in Santiago. And you go through Asturias and Galicia, and it's more mountainous, which is part of the reason why it is considered harder to do. I went in the summer. So it was through forest, mountainous terrain, mostly sunny, and it's beautiful scenery, absolutely stunning.
And I haven't done any of the Caminos, but I've actually been in Oviedo. I was there at the age of 17 as an exchange student. But of course, I wasn't a hiker then. I didn't appreciate it, but it was a beautiful, beautiful area.
Yeah, it's absolutely stunning. And there are small towns throughout, all along the path. Several times people just took it upon themselves to make sure I was hydrated, even though I don't speak Spanish and they don't speak English. People really, really look out for each other. And you get the sense that the Camino Primitivo is really a pride in northern Spain. So people there want you to feel comfortable. They want you to feel welcome. They want as many travelers going through there as possible.
True. Now, were you traveling this solo, or did you go with somebody, or how did that work?
I went with a friend.
Nice. How does that work out? Tell us a little bit about the dynamics of, because hiking people have different paces and such like that. Talk a little bit about the dynamics of hiking with a partner.
So it was really enjoyable, especially with this being my first major hike. I was uncomfortable with the idea of being a woman alone in a foreign country hiking, something that I've never done before. So I definitely benefited from walking with somebody, and I felt more comfortable. But there were days when we would sort of walk apart to be with ourselves. There were days when we would just sort of walk together. So it was a combination of both, but I can appreciate the experience more because walking with someone, you can have someone to look back on the memories with, and it just makes the entire experience all the more enjoyable.
And it's probably fun at the end of the day to kind of rehash what you went through that day.
Exactly. And there are challenges along the way that you have to go through together. And I also did the West Highland Way, but I did that by myself. And so I've sort of had the experience of doing a long distance hike with somebody and doing a long distance hike alone. They're both completely different dynamics, of course, but each of them both are astounding.
And looking back on the Camino Primitivo, do you feel that you would be comfortable doing that as a solo female?
I think I would. I definitely would. As I said, there is a pride in the Camino in Spain, and a lot of people actually get their business out of running hostels along the way. So people really go out of their way to make you feel comfortable. And the community of other hikers along the way as well is something that I've never seen before. The thing about the Primitivo is that not that many people do it because it is considered one of the hardest paths. And so the people that you do run into along the path are people that you see constantly every day over and over. So you really develop a friendship with people that you see along the way. And that really helped in making me feel more comfortable, making both my friend and I feel comfortable. And just when you're settling down at the end of the day, you really have a sense of community with everyone in the hostels because you've seen each other throughout the day, you've gone through the same things the same day, and it's just an amazing culture.
It is. From the things I've been hearing, and just even I did the West Highland Way myself, and you form very quick bonds with the people that you meet on the trail. And you've got this dual goal that you're all working towards it, and everybody helps each other out, and it's just a friendly, convivial environment. So much fun.
Right. And people respect you for taking on a huge feat that is a Camino path. So there's just a shared respect amongst everybody who's on it.
What struck you about the landscape?
Oh, there's so much. When you're going through the forest, for example, it just feels like you're in a storybook. It's unlike anything I'd ever seen before, with rolling hills in the distance, mountains in the distance, cultivated farmland adds to the landscape as well. And you actually walk through people's farms, and they're of course very accommodating and very nice. But even just the cities, how they're situated in the landscape, how they're situated on hills. And also there's one, I forget the name of the city, but there's one place that is extremely isolated. It hasn't changed at all since it was built in the medieval ages. And you just get that appreciation for history on the Camino Primitivo because it is such a remote path. And so a lot of the history of the landscape and of the architecture is preserved. And that's one of the striking things that I loved about it.
Were most of the villages that you spent the night of the medieval sort or modern or a mix, or talk about the different villages?
Most of them were of the medieval sort. You definitely get a sense of what medieval Spain was, especially because I think Asturias and Galicia have a strong pride in their Catholic history. And so you see a lot of monasteries, you see a lot of preserved churches, and I'm not exactly sure if it's correct, but I think it was one of the last Catholic strongholds against the Muslim influence in the south. And so the architecture and the villages really, really, really take pride in their Catholic past and even pagan past as well.
Gotcha. And the whole path itself you went, so you did it's almost 200 miles, if I'm not mistaken, about 350 kilometers. Yeah, that's quite right. How long did it take you?
We took 15 days.
Okay. And then you did this with Follow the Camino.
Correct.
And so you stayed in hostels, which a lot of the pilgrims, and that's what they call themselves when they're walking the Camino as a pilgrim. They have other different options, but you chose to do the hostel or the albergues. Am I saying that right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Tell us about those, or give us an idea of what an average one would be like.
So as somebody who had never done a Camino before, I wasn't really comfortable finding accommodation along the way. I think I was really comfortable with doing my Camino through One Foot Abroad because I was guaranteed a place to stay at the end of the night. There were some people who were walking with us and they had just planned to do this Camino on a whim. And so it's the summer months, it's busier along the path. And so some of the people that I was walking with weren't guaranteed a place to stay. So either they had to stop ahead of time or ahead of where they had planned to stop, or they had to go even further on top of being exhausted to find an albergue that had space available. Because some of these albergues, they only have maybe 8 beds. Some of them are larger, some of them are smaller. So it really, really depends and takes a lot of planning if you're going to do it without a booking service.
I guess sometimes too, you can get up really, really early and try to beat the ones that haven't booked. But I personally prefer to use a self-guided tour. That way I don't have to worry about that. All I have to do is get up and walk.
Exactly. That in the same way. Definitely the same way.
And they've already figured out where the best places to stay. I don't normally do hostels. I would. I'll do that sometimes when I travel, but I'm getting a little older, so I tend to want a little bit more quiet.
Yeah, for sure.
But you have the option to just say, hey, I don't want to do hostels. I would like to do, I'd rather cough up for 2-star or 3-star, or whatever the case may be. But you have the choice.
Exactly. Yes. And some people also, they chose to stay in a tent even. So yeah, there are plenty of options for places for people to stay. And it's very accommodating for all preferences.
And all budgets. So that's one of the nice things about it too.
Exactly.
Talk about some of the kinds of people that you met. Were they all ages from different countries, or who do you meet along the way?
They were all ages, different countries for sure. There was one evening where, as I said, you meet the same people along the way and you become friends with them. And there was one evening where some of the older Spanish gentlemen in the group, we all met in a hostel kitchen, and 2 of them made a humongous pot of paella for all of us. And you just got a sense of the diversity just sitting at the table. Germans, Americans, Spanish, Italian, Japanese, all different ages, everyone. Yeah. And everyone treated each other as if they've known each other for years.
Nice. Now you had the luxury of speaking English. What is the communal language at the table, if at all?
So everyone was pretty good with speaking English on the Camino. I never felt that me not knowing Spanish ever got in the way. Most of the people that you walk with are bilingual, so there was no issue there in not being understood or being able to understand anything.
And you said that the hosts and the local townspeople are welcoming?
Correct. And they don't always speak Spanish, so it helps to have a translating app on my phone that would then say what I was saying in Spanish for me. So definitely having some sort of translation device or phrase book or dictionary, something helped a lot.
And it goes a long way just to memorize like the top half a dozen polite phrases to show an effort. And it's not that hard to do that. So
right.
What do you wish you had known beforehand that is like, oh, I wish I'd known this, so we don't either make the same mistake or learn from was there clothing that you wish you'd brought, or any advice on something that you should have packed, not packed?
I think, a small thing that definitely would help if you're going in the summer is chapstick with sunblock in it, because everyone's like, oh yes, bring sunscreen, it'll help, but nobody really specifically says bring a chapstick with SPF. My lips definitely got sunburned and I'm still dealing with the residual effects of it a little bit. But in addition, I would just say protection from the sun is a big one, because there are stretches of the path where you are exposed to the sun a lot. And there are higher elevations where it feels like the sun is more intense. And so, yeah, I would definitely say bring more gear to protect against the sun.
I prefer long sleeves and long pants, even in the sun, just for the shade protection. Were you a shorts and short sleeve girl or a long sleeve girl, or what's your way?
I was a short sleeve person, but I picked up a shirt that was long sleeve and a sun protection shirt, but also moisture wicking. So it was probably one of the best investments that I did because it didn't generate heat at all. It really picked up the moisture from my sweat, and whenever the breeze would come through, it would just create an amazing cooling effect that I needed.
Do you normally have to bring all of your water for the day? Are there places along the way most of the time to get extra water? Because water's heavy. It's like 8 pounds a gallon.
Yeah, there are definitely places along the way. And the guide that I got from One Foot Abroad was really good about letting us know where public fountains were located. And also local residents are really good about putting signs on drinking fountains that aren't in use or that aren't safe to use. So yeah, so you don't have to worry about, oh, has this fountain been inspected in the last who knows how long? You don't have to worry about any of that because I think they're really good about being regular about those things.
I will put in on the show notes on my companion podcast, the Adventure Travel Show, I have an episode on water treatment. Even if you don't want to go through bringing like a Sawyer squeeze or something like that, you could get a life straw, weighs nothing. And if you're at all antsy, you can just sip through that and it'll
exactly
99.9% of the junk, and then you don't have to sweat it.
On that note, though, the friend that I was with, he did bring a life straw, and he used it in just a stream that was coming down a mountain, and he had no problems at all. Good. So that's just another side note that he definitely did that.
It's always good to have a little extra because you may run out of water, and you're in the summertime where it's going to get hot. And speaking of which, how hot was it?
I would say it didn't get as hot as Madrid, which was maybe 95 to 99 degrees Fahrenheit, but it was probably in the low to mid 80s the whole time.
Okay.
Yeah, and we only ran into one day that was raining / really foggy. Otherwise, it was sunshine at all times.
Nice. And what month did you go in?
August.
In August.
Late August, early September. Yeah.
Most people go April through October. The busiest months are May and June. So you're getting at the tail end, I guess, most. And also you're up a little further north. So the temperatures are going to be more pleasant than a lot of the other routes.
Exactly. Yep.
Do you usually get a nice breeze?
Yes, you do, for sure.
Any special memories from any of the villages that you stopped in?
I think at the end of the day in, I think, Grandas de Sumime, I believe, there was just a memory of sitting at a cafe eating a hamburger in the face of a 11th century church. It was just, yeah. When you're just surrounded by this history, every village you stop in is just amazing to take in. And it's the simple things like that along the Camino Primitivo that really add up. And you look back on them and you're like, wow, I can't say enough how much I appreciated those small things.
I was just on the interview I recorded right before this, we were trying to put into words what walking holidays are like. And it really is the total package. So much individual moments as the whole group memory of the experience rather than individual memories. It's the whole feeling and the whole just embracing that the whole trip and like one big memory.
Exactly. And it's hard to pinpoint one thing about the trip that you really loved because you get a different experience in every village you visit. Lugo, for example, has a Roman wall still intact around the entire city. So that's an entire memory. That's an entire hour of reminiscing in itself. So it's really, really hard to pinpoint something about a walking holiday, one thing about a walking holiday that you love.
And Rose, had you ever been to a place that had such ancient buildings?
No, this was my first time.
No, I mean, I was blown away that I was sleeping in places that have been around for 500 years and we think 100 years is an old house.
Exactly.
Like, wow, that's a baby.
Yeah, and actually the thing about the Primitivo that was really cool is it's rumored that the Camino Primitivo path was actually an old pagan highway. And so with the cathedral being built in Santiago, the Catholics adopted it to be a pilgrimage route, thus covering up the pagan history behind it. So there's that history as well that I didn't delve into as much, but it's definitely prevalent in cities like Tineo and Lugo.
If you were to guess how many people were doing this pilgrimage as a religious pilgrimage versus a just for their own non-religious reasons, what percentage would you say is one way or the other?
So I didn't meet anyone who's doing it for religious reasons on the permit. It wasn't really until the last town where you started to get the convergence of the Camino Frances on the trail as well. And so you were getting all of these pilgrims from other paths. The trail got much, much busier. And there you saw groups of nuns who were hiking together, for example, or people who were walking while also praying the rosary. So it wasn't until we started converging with the Camino Frances that I saw people doing it for religious reasons. And even then, I would say maybe 80% of people were doing it for leisure and just as a hiking hobby.
Okay. And for those that aren't aware, so the El Camino de Santiago is going to the cathedral in Santiago that is reputed to have the remains of St. James that were boated up from Jerusalem. And so if you make this pilgrimage to the cathedral, then you would get a special indulgence from the Catholic Church, which would, I believe, buy you a little time out of purgatory. And I don't know if I have the whole thing square on that, but it gives you some special grace. And so that's why people will do this for religious reasons. But over time, and particularly I think since the movie The Way came out with Martin Sheen, that it's become more popular as just this is a time for me to do the trail, for my time, it's me time.
Right. Right.
So.
And going back to your question about, or what wisdom I would offer, I would actually say, make sure you research before you go on the Camino to see if the Cathedral of Santiago is actually open. Because when we went and when we finished, the cathedral is actually under construction. And so we didn't get a chance to have the Pilgrims Mass inside the main cathedral. We had to have it at a smaller church close by. So I would definitely make sure that when you end the Camino, you're actually able to go into the cathedral.
Great point. I think they're finished with the renovations, but I'm not 100% sure. And it's always best to check, because even if they are finished now, they might stop for another reason. So check with your tour company on that. And also every 7 years is a Jubilee year. So if you want to avoid the crowds, you don't want to do it on the 7-year cycle, because that will bring in a lot more people. So it's a good idea just to kind of pay attention. I'll have information about all this in the show notes, and you can always find those at activetraveladventures.com. So did you do the luggage transport? Can you talk about that?
No, we did not do the luggage transport. We really consolidated everything that we needed, and we carried everything from town to town on our backs. I have a 50-liter Osprey backpack, and that carried everything I needed. We hand washed everything unless we took a rest day somewhere that had a laundry facility. And yeah, it was very simple.
What towns would you suggest if you wanted to take a rest day would be great towns to do so, just because they're especially cute?
Definitely Lugo, because of the Roman wall. Also, it's in a more industrial city, so you have access to more laundry facilities, and it's just stunning. It's absolutely gorgeous. And then I would also say the hillside town of Tineo is absolutely gorgeous.
Cool. And so if you did not feel like carrying your backpack, Follow Camino could arrange for your luggage to be transferred every day. So all you're carrying is your day pack, which would just be your water, some little extra clothes, snacks, emergency kit, and all that. So for people like me, if I had the option, I'm going to take the luggage transfer, but you're younger than me by far. So go for it, girlfriend. Right.
But also, if it was, because these days are really, really long, and in the summer it's really hot. So Follow the Camino, I feel like, is very good about being in contact with you if you should need any assistance or if you get too tired to continue. But also along the way of the Camino, there are always phone numbers for taxis posted who will have no problem wherever you are coming to pick you up.
Cool. That's good to know.
Yeah.
And let's talk about food. That's very important to me. I hope it is to you.
Yeah. So the food is amazing, of course. They have Asturias really, and Oviedo specifically, really prides itself on its cider, and they have a very elaborate practice of serving that cider to you, where they pour the cider out into a glass with their arms stretched over their head. It's kind of hard to mimic it over a podcast, but it's very entertaining. It's a pride of the region. And then a lot of the food stuff that they have are most seafood, which of course is my favorite. And I didn't have a problem with cuisine anywhere. I was happy to eat everything because it was so good. And also just being exposed to regional cuisine from town to town was just an amazing experience.
That's cool. Very nice. Did you train any special way before you did this?
No, but before I went on the hike, I prefer walking, and I was in school in Chicago, so I would walk everywhere anyway. So I didn't explicitly train for this, but I definitely had built a habit of walking everywhere I went already. So for someone who is planning to do the Camino, I would routine, just add more walking into your daily life as much as you possibly can, because it definitely helps.
What was your average mileage each day, would you say?
Probably 18 to 20 miles per day.
Holy mackerel. Okay. Well, now obviously Rose is a lot younger than us. Most of us can do like between 8 to 12. Sometimes we'll do 14. So, and without the backpack, because most of my group here is a little older like me. I'm 60. So when you were making your plans, did you tell them, I want to do it in this many days? Or because that's actually pretty high mileage, particularly carrying a backpack.
Yeah, so I went by the plan that Follow the Camino had on their website. And I wouldn't say that the mileage is like that most of the time. That's a lot of the days, but there are also some days where you have 14 miles or less. I think the least we had was maybe 8 miles. But the longest days are when having a rest day really comes in handy.
Right. And that's one thing you can do is kind of plan, say, okay, this is how many miles I think I want to do, and let them figure out the best way to do that, and work together with whatever tour company to figure out, so that you're not dead when you get to the town. You want to be able to at least relax and enjoy yourself and not say, oh my God, I got to get and do it again. Because to me, a walking holiday, the hardest thing that you got to get in your head and the biggest change is you can do anything for one day, but every single morning you've got to get up and do it again for a period of time. And that's what people don't necessarily train for. And the body is used to having a little break, and you don't get a break unless you take a rest day periodically.
Right. But at the same time, Follow the Camino is very, very accommodating. And if you tell them how much you can do, what your preferences are for walking distance, I don't think that you would ever have any problem with planning with them.
Yeah, they'll customize it for you according to what you need. And then go up to 4-star at least too. So you can change your mileage, you can change your accommodations, you can move your luggage, carry your luggage. So there's all different ways so that you find the right mix that works for you.
Exactly.
So what did it feel like when you're finally coming in to Santiago?
So there are a lot of things letting you know that you're almost there. There are stone markers counting down your kilometers until you're there. There's a huge Pilgrims Monument that overlooks Santiago. I think that's one of the most iconic monuments of this city that a lot of pilgrims take pictures of. And when you are coming in, you just see the city spread out before you, and it's bigger than anything you've ever seen on the path thus far. So finally coming to a bigger city is such a huge relief. And you just get the sense that, yes, I have made it. And when you're walking into the city, you just feel very welcome. You feel like your entire journey is being celebrated because it's the end of the journey. And so the entire city is really just a celebration of pilgrims in general. when you're finally approaching the cathedral itself, I'm not sure if he's there at all times, but there was a man playing the bagpipes, and it was just a very dramatic descent down the stone steps and into the courtyard of the main cathedral.
Oh, cool.
And you just get this huge sense of relief, and there's so many people who are laughing and crying and taking photos with each other and sort of like jumping up and down, celebrating that they finally made it. Some people are passed out on the ground with exhaustion. So yeah, you just get a sense of relief that you finally made it.
Quite an accomplishment. Were there ever any days you're like, if I say type 2 fun, do you know what I'm talking about? Do you know what I mean by that?
I'm not sure.
Okay, so type 1 fun is you're having a great time while you're doing it and you love reminiscing about it. Type 2 fun is during the time you're doing it, like, what on earth was I thinking? Why am I doing this? But then when you get there, like, man, that was awesome. I'm so glad I did that. So how much of this trip was type 1 fun versus type 2 fun, would you say?
I think the first 3 days were type 1 fun when we were still getting used to the beauty of the landscape and we were so excited to wake up and to continue walking. But then when it came to the more mountainous days, it was definitely type B fun. There were days when I think there's a lot of video that my friend took of me just dragging my feet up this mountain. And then the path that we took wasn't anything major in terms of mountainous. There is an alternative route that does go up into the mountains in a more serious ascent, but we chose to take the more low-key but longer path around it. But there are definitely days when you feel like your feet are just dragging, especially when it's really hot. And there are some days where it's really hot and you're walking along asphalt along the road. And there are those days where you're just like, I need to call a taxi right now. I don't think I'm going to make it, but we never did.
Looking back, are you delighted that you did it, or tell us how you feel looking back?
Looking back, I would do it again in a heartbeat, and I would do it again backwards. It was the most incredible first long distance hiking trip I have ever done. Absolutely would do it again.
Do you have other plans to do other long distance hikes?
Yeah, so since then, and really appreciating my capacity for hiking long distance, I would like to make it a yearly occurrence. I would like to do a 5-day trip across the Gorge du Verdon in Provence, France, and then also do a day of walking through Carcassonne, which is also in the same region in France. I've never hiked in the United States before, so maybe I'll plan something here. Those are the two options.
There's some cool ones you could do, like a hut to hut in the White Mountains. It's quite challenging, but gotta get reservations, so you would have to book that. But that's kind of nice. And I'm trying to think of other ones on my website if you wanted to do long distance ones, or you could do parts of the Appalachian Trail, or you don't have to do the whole thing if you don't have it. And also I want to mention too, there is a sister Camino to the El Camino that's in Japan called the Kamano Kodo. And I did an episode on that. So that might be something you want to add to your list. So you do all the Caminos. So that Japanese one, that's pretty challenging as well, but that would be a really cool bookend to your Caminos.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I didn't even know about that. Thank you so much for telling me.
And also coming up, it's not affiliated with these Caminos, but they're kind of piggybacking on the idea. Costa Rica has just come out with their own Camino, a coast to coast. And I'm actually leading a trip to that in 2022. And so that's pretty exciting. So that goes through all the ecosystems.
Thank you so much for telling me. I would love to learn more about all of these for sure.
And I'll put a link in the show notes, excuse me, to all the long distance hikes we've covered on the show, because they truly are all over the world. And it's just a fabulous way to truly get deep and get a real authentic experience of a country.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Especially when I did the West Highland Way and I was studying my master's in London. And I didn't have any experience in the UK before. And so visiting Scotland and doing the West Highland Way, I felt like I saw so much more of the country by walking through it. And the same thing in Spain. I saw so much more of the country walking through it than if I were to have driven or just stayed in a hotel in one of the cities. So I 10 out of 10 recommend long distance hiking holidays.
Perfect. Any final thoughts before I let you go, Rose?
No, I think you've got all the information that I have to offer, and that I just really appreciate you asking me to come on.
No, we're thrilled to have you and thrilled that you took the time to do so. And so thank you again.
Yeah, thank you.
I hope you've enjoyed exploring the Camino Primitivo today. You'll find more details and loads of Rose's pictures on the show notes and website, so be sure to check them out. The renovations in the main cathedral in Santiago have been completed, so the pilgrims' masses inside the cathedral have resumed. But as mentioned, it's always a good idea to check beforehand. It's a very old cathedral, so whenever you're listening to this, they might have different changes. But as of right now, recording this in April of 2022, the cathedral is open. Also, due to the pandemic, the Pope has extended the 2021 Jubilee year through 2022. So this is actually a great year to watch that cool incense burner being swung during the High Mass. Check the ATA website for details and see a video of this incredible ritual. The travel planner that comes with this episode also has even more details to help you plan your Camino. You'll get access automatically with the monthly newsletter. You can sign up if you haven't done so already at activetraveladventures.com, or just email me at kit@activetraveladventures.com. Tell me that you want to be on the list and I'll get you on there right away. And remember, if you do decide to go on a Camino using my affiliate, Follow the Camino, you can get 5% off any of their tours using the promo discount code exclusive to Active Travel Adventures of ATA5, ATA5. That will give you 5% off any tour of Follow the Camino, or their sister company, One Foot Abroad, who does really fun biking and hiking tours, guided and self-guided throughout Europe. Thanks again for listening. Until next time, this is Kit Parks. Adventure on!